Jake, we are recording and streaming, so whenever you feel that we are ready to start the meeting, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, thank you, Frank. I think we're waiting for a couple of other planning commission members to join us. I know Mark Klecker contacted me earlier this morning indicating he is not going to be available today. I do see we have Amanda and Colin both participating, so if we need to exercise the option to utilize them for voting purposes, we can do so to obtain a quorum. I see Tony has also logged in. I'm going to promote her to panelist. Here we are. So I believe all of our planning commission members are present. With that, we could call the meeting to order. I'll conduct a roll call. Mr. Klecker is absent. Mr. Spiker?
Here.
Present. Ms. Mazanowski? Present. Mr. Wazorek?
I am here.
Present. Ms. Burlingham? Present. And Mr. Russ? Present. So we do have 3 voting members and 2 alternates present. We do have a quorum.
Hey, Jake, I don't know what the, sorry to interrupt on this. I don't know what the procedure is in these situations, but highlighting for everybody in advance, I have a conflict of interest on the one agenda item, and I'll be abstaining from that vote. Just making sure we have a quorum in regard to that vote.
Yes, we would still have a quorum on that vote because we can certainly utilize the alternates for voting purposes. Thank you. First up on the agenda is the election of the 2022 Planning Commission officers. Typically, we would have nominations for chair, vice chair, and secretary. By way of sort of jumping the gun in one respect, for secretary, I've been acting as secretary. I'm going to suggest that we nominate Amy Francis for secretary for this coming year. Transitioning some of our responsibilities.
assuming that Mark would be amenable, I would nominate Mark Klecker to continue as chairman.
Thank you, Rich. I know Mark had reached out to me saying that he would, if nominated, he would continue to serve as chair. So do we have a second on the nomination?
I'll second that.
Or, thank you. We have a motion and a second to nominate Mark Klecker for chair for 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Mr. Spiker to continue.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for Rich to continue to serve as vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? None. Thank you. Do I have a motion on nominating Amy Francis for secretary?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Thank you, Amy. All right, we have our election of officers completed. Rich, since Mark is absent, if you'd like to MC the meeting, by all means, go ahead and do so. If you'd like me to read off the agenda items, I'd be happy to do so as well.
I'd appreciate it if you'd read the agenda item since I don't have one in front of me.
Okay.
Before we move on to the agenda items, I think it's fair to note that I continue to serve as the Planning Commission's delegate to the Blighted Property Review Committee of the Erie Water Authority, Erie Redevelopment Authority, excuse me. And I've done it for numerous years. I'm willing to continue to do it, but if anybody would like to take it over, now would be the time to do it, if there's any interest.
Someday when you've had enough of blighted property, let me know.
Okay. It's never ending.
I've been there before, so I can handle being a liaison in the future, but
Yeah.
It's a requirement that we have an architect on the planning commission, right? So there's not that many left on the list. I'll let you serve your time.
Okay. Thanks. Makes me feel old.
I'm not sure whether we need a motion and a second to nominate you, Rich, as the designated rep to BCR or BPRC.
Yep.
I'm not
Okay.
sure. But I am noting it.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Next up on the agenda is approval of the November 16th, 2021 meeting minutes, which were distributed previously. Were there any questions, comments, edits needed for the minutes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. A second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No. I'll let him in. I see he's attending.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sorry. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay. You guys have it. Minutes are approved. Thank you. Next up on the agenda, we have review of a right-of-way vacation request. This is a request to vacate West 20th Street between Burst Avenue and Haybarger Avenue. By way of a preface, the request was submitted to council, who then forwarded a request for the Planning Commission to review it and make a recommendation on it. What is typical in right-of-way vacation requests is if I have received that request, I distribute that to all of the internal departments in the city for their initial response and comment to make sure that there are no issues with any city infrastructure services that would be impacted, that may even preclude having the petition move forward. That has been done, and I've also reached out to any of the potentially affected utility companies in the area. We have a fairly standard list of providers that could potentially have infrastructure in that area. That was done also a few weeks ago, as a matter of fact. We have received some comments from several of the folks on the notification list, and those comments have been forwarded previously to the Planning Commission members for their review. I think before we get into responses and comments regarding the request, I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to discuss the project and the request in more detail, and give the Planning Commission members an opportunity to ask questions. Chris, will you be providing that overview, Mr. Groner?
Hi, Jake. Yeah, I can provide an overview of the project. I do believe a representative from Erie was going to call in. I don't know if he's in a waiting list or a lobby here on Zoom, but I would like to just give a brief overview. So whenever you're ready, if that time is now.
Yes, is there any, I see that Andrew Wrestler's on the list, which I've brought him in, and is there anybody else from Erie that would want to speak?
They have at least one or two other representatives. Dan Fiskus is a Erie employee.
Okay, I'm just promoting the other folks into the room so that you'll have an opportunity to speak. If there's anybody else I'm missing, just let me know.
Jake, we have both Dan Fiskus and Matt
Ritigliano. I think Dan, it looks like
Okay.
Dan joined, but Matt's also one of our
Yes.
project managers.
Good afternoon, everyone.
I see him and I'm promoting him in. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Jake, I don't know if you want to
Okay, I
give,
think everybody is set.
we could probably give our guests or the applicants an opportunity to review the project, and I can just be on standby here for questions and maybe chime in at the end. Whatever you prefer.
That's fine.
You want me to go ahead and go through that now, Jake?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm happy to share visual, whatever's easiest. There you go. So the request is part of an ongoing expansion project, growth project that Rarick Pacific has had going on for, I mean, it's really part of the past 10 years with some expansion along 20th Street. We've continued to grow internal to our building that's on the north side of 20th Street. Recently completed about a $14 million, 18-month project with new equipment, machinery. Over the past year, we've acquired boys and girls baseball of Erie field that you can see in the topo here. That's on the corner of Burst and 20th First Street. And then the next phase of the project and why we are submitting the request for vacating 20th Street is to help us with access across the street. Short term, just to be able to legally drive powered industrial trucks, forklifts across 20th Street without having to worry about public traffic, without having an unlicensed vehicle crossing a public street. And that allows us to gain quite a bit of logistical efficiencies in moving product between our manufacturing facility and the warehouse that you see in between JW Architecture and the baseball field. That is our warehouse facility on the south side of 20th Street. Just there's not a north arrow, but for those viewing, the north side of the street is closest to the top of the page. South side is the bottom of the page. So that's really the background of the request. Understanding feasibility, understanding what access rights we would gain. That will allow us to consider next steps in developing the south side of the street for future logistic and warehousing projects. We currently lease warehousing space from Hardinger Transportation, which is east of our property by about 3 miles. And again, most of the product that we produce ends up exiting our manufacturing facility and getting transported either to Hardinger or the warehouse that you see on the south side of the street. So the closure of 20th Street allows us to move that product more efficiently, and also allows us to consider further warehousing projects on the south side of the street to eliminate the need for outside storage. So that's kind of grand overview. Happy to dive into whatever other details the commission would like to know.
I don't know if this is a good time for me to share my perspective. And obviously I already declared I have to abstain from my conflict of interest in the name of my company on the on the map. But my business partners here, and I'd also like to point out that the name of the building on the map, JW Architecture, we're a tenant in the building that's owned by the Doyle family and is home to Frontier General Contracting. And Rob is on this call to share his viewpoint. But our design build company will be negatively and adversely affected by this change because we currently have a curb cut and access to the road, which we require for the function of our construction company. If you look at our property on the map, there's a parking lot to the south of us to which we do not own or have access to. That is owned by PMI on the other side of Haybarger from us. We were invited by the Erie team over to meet with them and discuss our concerns, and they seem to understand those. Nice guys. I'm glad to have met with them and hear their perspective on things. I would like to point out that after meeting with them, I've realized I should be upset and angry with this whole process in the city. This has been a huge distraction to my company and Frontier General Contracting. We had to devote our attention to figure out what's going on and all the parameters involved. I'd say at least a dozen hours apiece between myself and Rob Doyle. I really feel like this is a prime example of a cart before a horse type of project, where we met with these fine gentlemen over at Erie. They weren't even aware of the process that they were in. We were explaining to them during that meeting what would occur at this meeting. So I'm pretty upset with the redevelopment team to get it to this point, especially after seeing all the major objections come in from the utilities, including the waterworks, the fire department, and Verizon. It just seems like somebody should have done a little more research on the government's end of things before they even got to the point where we were wasting our time, because I like to know who we send our invoice to. And it's the point now where do we have to hire a lawyer next, and who's going to pay for that? So I'm no offense to the guys over at Erie. We have no issue with them expanding their business, and 80% of the abandonment of the street would not affect us. But literally nobody talked to myself or the Doyle family here prior to my advantageous position of being on the planning commission and being aware of these things happening. So I'm very concerned for future events like this to occur where somebody's not as in tune and in touch with the inner workings as I am, and they get steamrolled by a process that they may not be aware of. And we also have expansion plans ourselves for our office. If you look at our property, we are maxed out on our parking, and to take away potential street parking for us is also a concern for our future growth. So I'm just sharing that I'm not real happy with how this process has been played out, and I'm sad and concerned for all future developments in Erie. That they can get to this point where you're literally wasting hours and hours of people's time. It's unnecessary. And we've been presented with these drawings that Erie put together. To me, in my profession, these are cartoons. I would like to see a black and white civil engineer drawing laying out the proposed solution, where the right-of-way will, for us to access our property, will be laid out. We have seen nothing at that level of definition that I would anticipate at this juncture. So that's my perspective. And again, I'll unfortunately have to abstain in this awkward situation where I would probably normally vote no or kick it back to we need more information if I was able to vote in this.
So I've got a quick two-part question here. It's Colin. So first one, if this doesn't go through, what's the impact? What impact does this have on those expansion plans? What is the impact really to your operations? And the second part of it is, comment was just made that 80% closure wouldn't really impact Frontier and JW. What is that a feasible or an amenable kind of agreement for you guys? Is that something that could work as well without impacting your team as well as the other businesses?
Yeah, thanks, Colin. First off, Jason, appreciate the response and candor. Do appreciate also the comments about working with our team. I know I was not directly part of those meetings, but between Matt and Dan, this is new for us as well. I do want to get that out in the open, that we have not asked for a street vacation before, nor have closed the street. We know that we have a street next to us to the west. It has been vacated over the years, as well as on both sides of Hayburger and Burst, which are kind of paper streets at this point. But understanding the process, that is part of it. And certainly understanding your needs as a neighbor, is part of the process as well. And certainly can look to pursue that as part of our next steps. Colin, to get to your questions, probably the easiest first is looking at what percentage of the street we could not close or gain, provide access to Frontier Contracting through. I think where their property lies, that frontage, there is certainly opportunity for an agreement between the parties to allow for reasonable access. Whether the street is formally closed at that portion and there's some type of easement agreement right of way, or that portion for however is best assembled in the formal street closure, whether that doesn't get closed. I think that is some part of the project that we can work with. The majority of the building, the majority of the transportation between our building would not occur until you reach the property line to the west of Frontier General Contracting. So I think that we can offset that portion of the street and limit any issues with access, easy access in and out of their property. As for impact, the overall plans, again, as we've grown, and I encourage and give the opportunity for anybody from the Planning Commission, if you care to tour our facility, you're welcome to do that. We'd be happy to show you what we do and why we're here today with some of the challenges. But we make a lot of large products inside of our facility and they need to go somewhere. Normally they do not get on a truck and go directly down the road to our customer. There's some type of holding period associated with it. So the overall compromise is, as we look at how we would develop the baseball field, that return on investment and what we would look to do with that piece of property, if we cannot easily, get product across the street without shuttling and a lot of on and off loading of trailers, we would have to take a deeper look at that. It certainly needs to make financial sense. So whether we build a building or we continue to utilize Hardinger as a third-party partner, that is where the decision that we would be faced with at that point is how do we best utilize the south side of our property.
This is Rich Spiker. Have you had conversations with the other respondees to the Jake's letter regarding their concerns about the impact of closing the road?
I am not aware of the other entities that have contested other through what Jason has shared with us in our meetings. I understand Verizon and an affiliate of Norfolk Southern have both commented on their opposition to closing the street.
I can help you with this, Andrew. Nobody relayed those communications to you because the system of communication, to no fault of yours, is piss poor.
So understanding what those, who it was, I can assume the reason why, with overhead utility lines, both through through Penelec, Verizon, and I'm not sure if there's cable or whatnot. I do know, as we built on that general block of property, that we've moved utility lines before with Penelec and Verizon, and normally can come up with some type of solution that can continue to allow them to have access and keep all of those lines safe. I
Okay.
don't know the concerns of the affiliate of Norfolk Southern. I assume that it has to do with the discontinued portions of Haybarger and Burst that extend on the east and west sides of our property, which serve as access points to the rail. Neither of those would be compromised access points with the project that we're proposing.
All right, the other, the water authority has lines in the street that they're concerned about maintaining access to and characterize it as a critical part of their network. The fire department raised issues relating to compliance with the fire prevention code, access to facilities. I think that we're probably not in a position to approve it today. In my opinion, I think that what has to happen is for you and the various parties who've spoken up to sit down and try to work out an accommodation plan that satisfies all concerned. I mean, I'll note that right before the meeting, I got a copy of a letter from Frontier Construction, and they seem amenable to working towards a resolution. I assume the other parties are also, they have needs or things that need to be accommodated. Do you have a problem proceeding in that direction?
I do not. I would, respectfully ask that we have the ability, or the commission can align us with the best person or panel that can walk us through this process, to Jason's point, and make sure that we're very clear on how we need to proceed and what your commission and other departments that may be involved in the process at this phase or after need to know, need to be aware of. If we're moving forward based on what we think is the process and there's a better way, we certainly want to be aware of that. I'm not sure who that person is at this point, but we are happy to follow whatever guided path there is, and we certainly want to do this so we are not a disruption to our neighbors. That's one thing that we pride ourselves of never being, and I'm sure that Frontier may grit their teeth at our parking at times, but that's not something that we look to challenge our neighbors with. So the answer is yes, with an asterisk that I would like to understand what that process entails, so we can follow it to a T and work on navigating that process as efficiently as we can from this point forward.
Okay. What's your hope for schedule? Are there any significant dates that you got to hit? Whatever.
Again, we don't know what the process is of closing the street. We did not assume that it was going to be snap our fingers and make it happen. Ideally, we take advantage of the summer with some type of construction or pre-construction work, but we still have a ways to go, understanding what the variances will be even after vacating the street. Mm-hmm. So, our goal was within the next 2 years that we would be able to take advantage of the south side of the street and have a solution in place.
Right. Gotcha. Jake, who's the person to deal with at the city to ensure that Erie is familiar with the people who have responded and how they should best proceed to identify and codify the whatever's agreements are necessary to accomplish a closure.
Well, from the standpoint of contacts at the city, any city-owned infrastructure, you would want to be talking with Public Works Department and City Engineer's Office, and they're both well aware of the project. I don't know what communications in any detail have occurred between Rarig and the city in that regard, but similar process would be followed to have conversations with all of the potentially affected utility companies in the area. What comes to mind is when improvements at the UPMC ballpark, there were similar concerns with the stub of East 9th that was proposing to be vacated. And the project manager for the applicant reached out to all of the utility companies and made those confirmations, got those confirmations that any easement or access issues would be addressed. I mean, that's typically the onus is on the applicant to make sure that any of those unresolved issues are resolved prior to the Planning Commission taking any action on making a recommendation back to council. And I know council, in seeing this initial proposal, I think it was brought up as to whether or not the neighboring property owners were contacted initially to discuss this proposal.
Perhaps this is something that the commission can consider as far as putting together some sort of quick reference guide that's published on the city website to make it, list out all of those things that need to be considered, need to be contacted for other businesses to have access to, and be able to make this hopefully a little bit more transparent and easier the next go around.
I agree with that.
That's
Jake.
true.
How
the
is Andrew?
administrative process is there. So the steps that an applicant takes is out there. So there's a process guide as far as the administrative steps that the city takes in addressing a right-of-way vacation request. But some of those other details perhaps could be more fleshed out. So the applicant, again, as far as contacting individual agencies, it's kind of like 811, call before you dig. As soon as you identify an area, a list of potentially affected companies would pull up with contacts so that you could discuss with them the potential project.
Jay, just to circle back, when you say that there's a guided process, that's more internal on the city side, or that already exists for what the private entity should be following?
Yeah, I mean, the process itself of submitting a petition for a right-of-way vacation, that was submitted, an application was, required to be prepared by yourselves in order to submit that letter of intent with the petition. So, I mean, that part of the process of who does it go to, how does it get, what steps does the city follow, is already outlined. That was already outlined in the application.
Obviously, something was missing on this, Jake, because Andrew's team, I wouldn't even know where to start on this process. How are they supposed to know who to engage? And unbeknownst to them, you email blasted all the utilities and contacted everybody, and then these guys aren't even privy to that process when they should be the ones that are instigating it. I'm just confused how anybody like Rerig is supposed to telekinetically know that this is the steps in the process. If it's not written somewhere on the website, and they've gotten this far, missing all of these steps. Somebody's got to take the blame for this. Somebody in City Hall or Chris or somebody. Like, this is crazy to me that we're asking these questions and we're at this meeting already. All this should have happened months ago.
Jake, and
Hey, Jason, I'm going to speak up on from the perspective of DCED, because we've been working with not just local, but also representatives of the state, because, you know, this is a project we want to support, obviously. So I don't know what that piece is, but we've been following, you know, the first step was to put it on City Council's agenda, to have it referred to the Planning Commission. We did that. So I don't know what needs to be added to the process to clarify for future applications, because from
talking to the neighbors ahead of time, that would be helpful. You never came and talked to us. Nobody from the city ever came and talked to us. The Erie guys engaged us. That's not how this should occur. It should be everybody sitting down at one table together to hash out the pros and cons and coming up with a solution. Instead, you've put us in this position. We have to literally defend our turf.
Well, Jason, I'm not sure why you're angry at me. I called you last week. You seemed upset at me, and I said that's why I'm calling you, is to talk this out.
Because it's already on the agenda, Chris.
It has to be put on the agenda, Jason.
You're telling me none of this can be figured out preemptively.
Well, you were angry from the time I called you. It's unfortunate. We've worked together before. I called you. I said, hey, Jason, can we talk about what's on agenda and what your thoughts are?
Because it should have never made it to the agenda until all this was hashed out, Chris.
Okay.
I disagree with Jason, because I think putting something on the agenda, if you're talking about transparency, I realize I'm not a member of the Planning Commission, but Jason, we are in a learning process. We are on City Council. I have stressed that communication is so critical. And remember,
yes,
we're in a pandemic, okay? So some of the normal ways of communicating are not there. We're all on Zoom today. So I think when you're saying, you know, where can we assign blame? I think a better course is what Colin said. How do we resolve this for this? And then going forward, look at it as a learning process. I mean, I can't resolve that, you know, that you want to blame somebody. But
I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not trying to blame you.
Who is going to take the blame for this? So
this is costing us a lot of time and money, Liz, that we would rather be focused on our day jobs right now and servicing our clients. And I don't want to have to be talking about right-of-ways outside of our property.
Here, maybe you should be on the Planning Commission then, if you're taking time away from your business.
Hi, everyone. Could I chime in? This is Kathy Rosdick. Sorry, I'm sitting out in the waiting room and you can't see me, but hopefully you can hear me. I understand that we found some cracks in the system, and all right, Jake's let me in now, so. Hold on. Sorry, it muted me while I came in. Sorry about that. This is Kathy Rosdick. I'm the planning director for the city. And I just wanted to chime in a little bit. It doesn't seem like this process was as smooth as it should have been, and I apologize. It can be very frustrating when you're managing a very large project like Rare Rig is. You've got a lot on your plate. You're trying to deal with a lot of different steps involved, and this is one of the first ones. Typically, I mean, I think we can do a better job in outlining what the process is, and usually in right-of-way abandonments, getting neighborhood resident buy-in, especially those who are affected, is usually step one. So we'll need to certainly add that to the process, that usually they're alerted first and foremost, and whether that's the property owner that's requesting the abandonment or the city, it doesn't really matter who takes ownership of that, but usually it's step one. Another thing that's on, so I think that we just lesson learned, and we'll continue to refine these processes as we go through, but what's next on your agenda, I think will help a lot. And that's really looking at an amendment to the saldo and incorporating a land development process that's more clear and transparent, and brings the developer to the table with multiple departments early on in concept stage, where you can just sit down, you talk to zoning, you talk to engineering, you talk to other public works, and everything's laid out for you all at one time. So you're not having to learn as you go. We can put together a timeline and then give you the processes that you'll have to go through depending on what your ideas and concepts are. So that doesn't help you RARIG representatives now, but that is something that we're talking about on the next item on the agenda that I think will help everyone in the moving forward. So Jason, I do apologize that you've had to waste some time on this and get frustrated, but let's just, and I'm not the planning commission chair, so I won't try to move us on. I just wanted to clarify that I think some steps were missed, and we'll make sure that we don't do that again. I apologize to everyone who's at a high level of frustration, and just know that I think the next item on the agenda will help clarify things moving forward for other development proposals when they come before the city.
Kathy,
The process was followed as was directed at this point. So if the process needs to change, it's certainly not anything that the guys at RARIG need to be hanging their hat on. We've been following the steps that were given to us. So if
I
that
understand
needs to
that, Chris.
improve,
Yeah, this was not a criticism of RARIG. So
Kathy, what would be helpful for us? And again, I want to make it clear to everybody on the commission, all of our neighbors that are on today, anybody else in the audience, we will follow the process. What we need to understand is what the process is. We understand some of the timing may not be perfect and communications. We will work with our neighbors to get that clarified. What's important though is understanding what's next so we can keep things moving or understand if there's something that we need to address early in the process. What I would like to know, and I don't need the answer on the call today, but I would like to know who is the person that we need to work with to understand what that process is.
At this point, it is in the hands of the Planning Commission, and that would be Jake. And at such time that the Planning Commission is able to recommend approval, then that would move to City Council. But it doesn't sound like the Planning Commission is there yet. They've got some issues with the property that Jason was mentioning. I believe I'm sorry, I was missed some of the earlier conversation. The issues with the utilities. You feel like Andrew that you have that you can move forward with those issues? Or are there any outstanding issues with utilities, or you don't know yet because you haven't had an opportunity to see the correspondence?
I haven't seen the correspondence. If I was to prognosticate a bit, it's just access and, how right of ways from current suspended lines, all of which we've been able to work through before with other building projects. But I don't know. I'm just estimating what the concern is.
Yeah.
Are you working with an engineer or architect regarding the project as a whole to meet land development requirements currently?
We have developmental partners that will pull in. This, again, Rich, this is step one, is understanding what the feasibility is of call it the barrier between our properties.
Sure.
So we're again in the process. We need to understand what that unlocks before we move to that next phase of full engineering development work.
Okay.
I want to just, oh, go ahead, Rich.
Well, I was just going to suggest that you, if you've worked with a civil engineer in the past, that you work with them to flesh these issues out and the potential resolution of them to the satisfaction of parties on both sides of the issue. I mean, ultimately, it's going to have to be reduced to a map that can be recorded and a series of agreements.
Mm-hmm. I just am wondering, Kathy, if there's any process that's in place with the new saldo where documents for a certain project would all be uploaded so that this type of issue, I mean, I can't say, I don't know the business owner, but I'm assuming that if he was made aware because he was able to view some of the documents that had come into Jake, he would have extended a hand to the parties involved. I mean, as a lay person who's not an architect, not a civil engineer, I think just trying to understand all of the moving pieces is very beneficial. And if all of those documents can be held in one place, as far as a project is concerned, I think it would be of benefit to the business owner as well as to the process as a whole.
I don't know if this answers your question, but certainly there's going to be a project file created. We don't really have a system by which an outside contractor developer can log in and see the project file. Eventually, actually, that will be something that we will have in place as we move forward with this new software system, but we don't have that right now. Certainly, and I don't know, Jake, maybe you could chime in how the best way to share those letters are, and at what point you would suggest sharing them with RARIG from a timing standpoint, of course.
Well, and I apologize if there was any confusion. The correspondence or notification to the utilities, I had copied Chris in on. I thought Chris was kind of acting as point, so I tried to keep Chris informed on any of the correspondences that were going back and forth. And again, as Kathy mentioned, the Planning Commission, this isn't really the final step. This is one of the first steps that's taken in reviewing this per council asking the Planning Commission to take a look at it. So there's no obligation or onus on the Planning Commission that because it's on the agenda, they have to take action today. It's obvious that in this case, there are some issues that need to be further discussed and resolved to make sure that there aren't going to be any negative impacts. And again, as I said, sometimes that's just going to involve some additional coordination between the petitioner and any potentially affected individuals or organizations, including neighboring property owners.
Jake, again, I think it's best we talk offline with this, but I understand that point. When we get added to the agenda, I honestly don't know what we're looking to achieve other than the commission support to move forward. But in preparation for being ready for the first agenda, and again, I know that we've aired this through many voices so far, but what brings us to that first point? Right? There's some steps that need to get there in order to get on the agenda. There's things that we need to do, obviously, on our own. Sounds like there's also, some involvement between your team and the city's team, perhaps other utilities. But if we can, I would like to set up a meeting so I can understand what I need to do, so we are in a position to time this so we get back on the agenda, and ideally we have all of our stakeholders satisfied with whatever information they need or agreements in place, compromises, whatever that is. I just need to understand what you and the commission needs to get to that point. I understand from our neighbor's standpoint, but I still don't understand your process. So I will send you an email, and I'm assuming that you are available to meet outside of these meetings, correct?
Yes, Andrew, if you're directing that question to me, yes.
Yes, that was to you. Thank you.
Yeah, Andrew, I really think that the problems are probably resolvable, given the ability and your willingness to work with the parties involved to make it happen. I don't see that as in my mind, a significant thing. And I think that anything that improves the ability of a local manufacturer to compete is important to the future of the city. So I have no issues with the intent of the project, assuming we can get these problems worked out. I suggest that we table the matter until you're able to come back with proposed resolutions to the identified problems.
Okay, thank you, Rich. I appreciate it.
Yep. Jake, will we need a second on a vote?
Yes, we have a motion to table. Do I hear a second?
I'll
Make
second
the
that.
motion.
Amanda, thank you.
Abstention.
Any opposed to the motion to table? No. Okay, so moved. Thank you, everybody. Next up on the agenda is discussion on the subdivision and land development ordinance. Prepared some kind of an overview and some preliminary recommendations. Kathy, do you want to kind of give an overview on that? I know we've sort of touched on it just with regards to the last item on the agenda, but
Yeah, I mean, I know you, yeah, you pulled together some recommendations, Jake, but I think if you want to share the Lancaster, I don't say that right in Pennsylvania. The overview for that place out in central PA. I like this. This is something that I've been really wanting to focus on for quite some time, and I feel like we're finally prepared to do that. I wanted to incorporate more of a land development review process in the Saldo that doesn't exist now, and there's a couple of reasons why this would benefit, I think, the city of Erie, and you saw one of them today. And once Jake shares that one page screen, I know he's pulling it up, you'll kind of see the method to the madness. But this is an area that I have a lot of background and experience in, is site plan or land development review is typically a process that the planning commission's involved in at some level. And there's usually a fairly well-defined process by which a developer can come in, usually at a concept plan review very early on, just has an idea. Rig will just use them as our poster child today, talking about that. This would give a concept plan would give them an opportunity to come in and speak to all of the city departments that they would eventually be working with, get a list of expectations and what the process looks like for them, can help develop a timeline, and then give them a punch list of all the approvals and reviews that they would need. It usually comes with a schedule of dates. So you can see here, this is what Lancaster, and it's the concept stage that is really probably the most beneficial, because it allows a conversation to happen that doesn't have to come with really hard diagrams or drawings. There doesn't really have to be anything that takes a lot of time or a lot of money to develop on the developer side, or on the property owners or developer side. You can talk about zoning changes that are needed, any any stormwater issues. It's just a way to get the departments around the table at a one-stop shop conversation. Right-of-way abandonments would have certainly be part of that. And then there is, and I know Jason was on the call, he may still be on the call as well. Jason, our assistant city engineer, he's usually involved with review of land development proposals at some level. But this would just be more of a formal process. There's also a step that I think is really critical that I haven't seen done in the city, where the planning commission, depending on the size of the development, actually the planning commission gets an opportunity to review it. Right now, unless it's a subdivision or a conditional use, you don't know that developments are happening, no matter what size they are. In most cities, larger developments are brought before the planning commission for review, sometimes review and approval. Gives you an opportunity to add comments as the citizen planner for the city. Any concerns you have, I think the people who sit on the planning commission for Erie, you would actually, a developer would be well served by hearing your input at an early stage on any concerns that you may see, whether or not you decide. And Liz, I know a million years ago, I think you were asking for something like this for large impactful developments, that they be brought before a planning commission, potentially city council. And that's not an unusual type of review process to see in a city this size with larger scale developments, even if it doesn't require any sort of special approvals. Almost always they do. Almost always they're so large that they need some sort of variance or some sort of use variance or something along those lines. In the waterfront districts, you get to see them all the time, but outside the waterfront districts, you really don't. So what Jake and I had talked about, and I think 2022 is the year we get it done, is to have the planning commission work on updating the saldo in a couple of different areas. I know he had suggested some design standards that needed to be reviewed and updated, but primarily I would like to see a more formalized process for developments. And like I said, when we instituted in Fairmont, I built in Fairmont, West Virginia, where I previously worked, they were similar in Erie, that they didn't have a process like this, and we incorporated it. I wrote it fairly soon after coming to Fairmont, and it was one of the best things that we ever did, for a number of reasons, the benefits. But that concept plan review is really very, very helpful. And I think you saw in one small instance how it could be helpful today. So Jake, hopefully I went over that. We didn't get a chance to figure out how we were going to play this discussion, but anyway, I'll just turn it over to you if you have other recommendations from your staff comments.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. I mean, as both of us have looked at the Lancaster example, and it's, I think that's worthy. We wanted to, aside from kind of a general overview and the preliminary staff recommendations, I mean, some of it is administrative in nature. Things like forms and checklists and things that just have not existed for the city to utilize for land development proposals. The communication processes even have not been terribly formalized. So the effectiveness of the communication has, from the city standpoint, there's good interdepartmental communication. But, between different applicants some have design professionals working with them who are very familiar, Rich, as you stated, when you have a design professional overseeing the project, usually they're well aware of some of these more detailed kinds of communications that need to occur, say with utility companies. But that's where I'm seeing the biggest, lack of any kind of guidance that had been developed by the city previously.
I just
So
wanted
that would speak to, I'm sorry, go ahead, Liz.
No, I just wanted to say a couple of things. I wasn't trying to pick on anybody. If anybody knows my 4 years and 1 month on city council, I've been all about process, and it's been one of my biggest frustrations is that city council itself doesn't often follow a lot of processes, but we did just create committees, and so having an actual committee process I think will be helpful. We have an economic development committee, so we can make sure that the liaisons that there's good communication between city council members kind of around topic areas, not so much personalities. And my final thing I'll say is Kathy Rosdick knows that I can't say Lancaster the way you and Jake both were able. You got that down. I can't say it correctly, but they know that Lancaster, not just that I went there for Pennsylvania Municipal League meeting a couple of months ago, but I watch what their council members have been doing. I borrowed some of their committee structures from Lancaster, and their website is just amazing in terms of being useful. So for the business owners on here, we know how important economic development is in Erie too. And, we care about neighborhoods. So all of those articulations are going to be achieved. It's taken a while, maybe longer than we would have liked, but I just want to reassure everybody, including Jason, that city council is on, at least I think it's on board right now to try and make us good partners and good communicators and knowing the right things to do. You're right. I'm on 4 years and there's still things that I don't know. We need training of city council members too. So that's part of the plan. So thanks for letting me add my 2 cents worth or 5 cents worth, whatever.
Kathy and Jake, can I just ask, back to first of all, I'm all about the process. I think that this is great, and kudos to you for hashing this out, and Kathy for bringing it with you from Fairmount and taking some from Lancaster, or however it's pronounced. Is there a space in here for, or some thought process that's been put out there about storing all of the documents digitally so that they're accessible to anyone who's involved in the process? What is that?
Permitting data room, or like a almost a virtual, project room.
Yeah.
That a virtual project folder that can be created and have step by step. You check it off as you go, and people are notified with their piece of the pie and all that. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Literally Evernote is, that's something that can work. Go ahead, Kathy.
So, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Right now, the city has a proposal from this company called CityWorks for permits, licensing, and land development. CityWorks works with municipalities all across the United States. They've been in business for 30 years. Because we've been looking at how do we incorporate a software system that, one, will take all of our processes that code office does now and it centralizes them in one system. Right now we're working on 7 different platforms, right, including Excel and Word, and it doesn't work. And it does make communication extremely difficult when you're working through so many different platforms. So we first of all wanted to prioritize as part of our biggest focus and goal was to how do we centralize a system that works, but also make it public facing. So as we're working with developers and third-party inspectors like BIU. We want them to have a system that they can check in and say, where is my permit? Where's my land development proposal? Has it been reviewed and approved by engineering? Has it been reviewed and approved by the 7 different places it has to get reviewed and approved? And they would be able to be able to do that. They would be able to check in and say, where is my system? I don't know enough about it, and Andy Zimmerman, who was on this call, he's the A student in the class because he sat through most of the videos that CityWorks has, the sample videos. There would be an opportunity, at least now it's all housed in the same platform, and it's consistently, and even to the point where you can submit plans electronically, which would be huge if we're not having to scan these things in, right? Then it's easier to share them when they are ready for public viewing, or when you can share them. So we're putting a lot of stock that CityWorks is going to be a silver bullet in many parts of our operation. It'll take about 18 months once we sign the contract to get this up and running. We're looking at, again, the scope of work now, and it's a big lift because this is more than a software system. It's how we change what we do and how we work every day. So change management is a big part of it. So long response to your question, Amanda, but yes, I believe CityWorks will give us the functionality to do that.
So I'm gonna pile on real quickly with a +1 for CityWorks. I've integrated many clients from the GIS side for utilities who submit, their as-built and right-of-way work, all of that into there. It's a fantastic platform when fully used. So being able to bring in all of that utility data and being able to see it from outages, all of that good stuff, and then the planning, permitting, and land use. It's a really, really nice product when done correctly and fully utilized.
Well, at this point, we're just on the PLL side, Colin. I know that they have the asset management side as well, but the Public Works hasn't taken that up yet. But we're definitely solidly bringing in the PLL portion of it.
Yeah, I was just with that aspect of it. I've seen it used with the ArcGIS platform. There's a integration there for utilities to leverage, which it's pretty cool. But that's great to hear that you guys are moving ahead with it.
Yeah. Thank you. So Jake, I don't know where you wanted to take this conversation. I think I would assume the next step is to have the Planning Commission do a little bit of homework, look at the land, do some comparison of the Lancaster versus Erie saldo, and then we start and adding your own expertise and frustrations is helpful to understand where the problems lie that we need to address and making sure that we're addressing them. So I know Rich and Jason's expressed some already today, but I know neither one of you will be silent on what, where some of these gaps are.
Yeah, I think really today I wanted to at least get the ball rolling and sort of bring us back to a couple of conversations that we've had previously that, and, in looking at those preliminary recommendations, those are pretty high level things. But I think the point is the pandemic kind of forced at least a preliminary look at changing some of the processes that the city used to review permit applications and land developments. And prior to COVID, there was very little by way of being able to electronically submit much of anything, even permit applications. So that at least was revamped to a point where while people were in isolation, and I guess still are in isolation, at least some of those processes can be done utilizing the city's website. And still, we're only halfway there because things are basically PDF documents and emails. And so that's this system that we're talking about implementing is going to really wrap things into where it's going to be hopefully seamless for everybody, and having that public facing portal so that anybody can review those projects and the status and, upload documents and things of that nature. I mean, it's going to be huge. It's going to change the way the city does business and just make it much more efficient from a land development standpoint. So what you see as far as those recommendations, those are just kind of the basics of things that we know we could get started with now. From the standpoint of some of the administrative process, that can begin to take shape. And aside from even a formal update of the saldo itself, which would incorporate some of those things, we could start incorporating some of the policy. There's somewhat policy administrative recommendations. Something like the form, the application form, the fee schedule, the checklist. Those are going to be helpful for everybody moving forward. Kathy, I mean, we could submit some other resources, some other examples of some of the other communities. Lancaster's a good one to look at. I tend to like to do that with Pennsylvania-based communities since we're all operating under the same municipalities planning code. Makes it a little more consistent as far as looking at other communities in Pennsylvania. So I think at this point, I mean, that's, we'll try and get some more information out to the planning commission members so you can do a little research, background, homework. And in the meantime, we'll be having some internal discussions on preparing some of the administrative things on the checklist there. And you notice that I leave bullets open because that's not the end of the list, that's the beginning of the list.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. I think we'll just start putting together some preliminary drafts, some information for you to look at. We'll give you some other examples and go from there. But I would like to keep this on our agenda every month so it keeps moving forward and get it in place. We definitely, again, since we're onboarding a new software system, we would want this in place so we can incorporate it into the new system without additional expense of bringing CityWorks back in to modify what they're doing for us. So now's a good time. That's all I had to.
That's all I have as well as far as any kind of formal presentation on that. We know we have a ways to go on both administratively and the software is going to be hopefully huge. So there'll be more to come. Any other comments from any of the others in attendance at this point? Yeah, as far as the agenda goes, I mean, there was really no action foreseen on this. This is going to be an ongoing discussion as we develop these products, and then at some point we'll be asking the planning commission to endorse some of these products and processes before we move forward. With that, I'll move on to public comment. I do not see any other folks in the room. That being said, if anybody does have anything they would like to state for the good of the order, that would be fine. Hearing none, Next item on the agenda is adjournment. Do we have a
So
motion to
moved.
adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.